about war, and also just hit it off personally as well. Indeed, Colin used to phone me so often, and he'd do it as he was finishing work, which was, of course, around 11:30, 12 at night UK, that my wife Alice, who is here somewhere, and she will confirm this, should it be necessary, said that he was the other man in her life. I've never inquired too very, and they certainly have a great shine for each other. I didn't have a private email account at the time either, so Colin used to actually send all sorts of really information and comments which would otherwise have been classified to Alice's account. But anyway, we did hit it off, and we had a similar view of, and we were much more cautious about prospect of military action. What the criticism that's consistently made of me and well, Colin can speak for himself, is that but neither of us would have initiated military action against Iraq, but bluntly both of us could have stopped it, but decided in the end not to do so. And that's a heavy responsibility on both of us.
I mean, at the outset of the chapter, when you deal with this, and you set it out quite frankly, you said, I could have stopped it, but here's the thing, I didn't do that. And certainly from the outset, it does seem as if the approach was, in terms of the United States, it's better to try and influence them from within than without. But it was just that the structure of you and Colin Powell and Tony Blair and George Bush, and how the sort of dynamic works within that, and who was the most for, and who was the, and how.
Well, on a spectrum, there would have been Colin and myself who were reluctant, then Tony, and then George Bush. But behind George Bush was open. I mean, I know his politics are not mine, self-evidently, but he's private persona, very different from his public persona, and he was open to argument and was someone who really engaged in discussion. But beyond him, there was Rumsfeld, and then beyond him, there was Dick Cheney, who was really the dark force in that administration. And he never took part in collective discussions. So he was doing a video conference, he'd be sitting there, away from the White House, but taking no part in the discussion. But I knew, not least from Colin, that the moment the video conference had finished, he would go around the back and would go from his office into the Oval Office and or get on the telephones and pressure George Bush into a particular position. What the Americans had decided, George Bush had decided that the Iraqis did pose a real threat in terms of their weapons of mass destruction, and the fact that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction wasn't in the least made up. I mean, they had. And the United Nations weapons inspectors had charted all the chemical and biological weapon systems they'd had. They charted what they knew had happened to part of them, but there were big questions about very large arsenals which the Iraqis had failed to account for. And the Iraqis had denied having a biological weapons system at all. And they managed to keep that from inspectors who were all over Iraq for 4 years after the Kuwait War, from 1991 until 1995. And that only emerged when Saddam Hussein's son defected, came out with all the detail, it turned out to be true. And by the way, when the son was enticed back to Iraq on conditions of safe passage, he was then murdered. So there was entirely rational basis for the belief, but Bush had decided after 9/11 you needed to do something about Saddam. Tony also decided that. I was more sceptical, so was Colin. But what Tony and Colin and I were worried about was that we should try and push the United States into the United Nations route and give the possibility of tougher inspections a chance. And we almost got there. We got Resolution 1441, which was a remarkable achievement, I think, by the US and the UK. We managed to get Russia and China and even Syria to sign up to that resolution, which declared that Iraq did pose a threat to international peace and security because of its weapons of mass destruction. And it also imposed obligations on Saddam which were easy for them to meet, not difficult. So we came within a whisker of resolving that peacefully, for reasons which I set out in the book, which some people regard as controversial, but from my perspective, controversial or not, are accurate. The possibility of enforcing 41 through a second resolution, when it dissolved after President Chirac had said that whatever the circumstances, he would veto a second resolution, which had the effect of Saddam thinking he was off the hook. The whole process of diplomacy backed by threat of force dissolving. And then it was at that point that I became convinced, and I think Colin did, that military action was inevitable and justified. So.
Do you think that if France hadn't vetoed and you had moved to a second resolution, that there was a chance that would have been a sufficient stick to sort of...
Yes, no, I do. What happened was, I know that Hans Blix now says that it implies that he had declared that Saddam was complying with the resolutions. He didn't. But that was not what Blix was saying at the time. If Blix had said at the time, Iraq is complying with their obligations under 1441, the United Kingdom would not have participated in the war, could not have done. There would have absolutely no legal basis for it. And I don't believe the United States would either, because even though the US's legal position is different, the Commander-in-Chief has to be able to face the perils of the young men and women who you put in harm's way, if it turns out there's no justification for it. I mean, that is one of the most abject failures of any head of government. So, but Saddam had not complied. It was Hans Blix, to me, in the body of the Security Council chamber, who proposed 6 tests for the Iraqis, which should go to the second resolution, which they duly did. Very easy to comply with. Like, for example, ensuring that Iraqi scientists were interviewed outside Iraq and without Iraqi thugs present whilst the interviews were being taking place and so on. Things like that. If France had not vetoed it, if it would have got a second resolution, it would have said to Saddam, comply within 6 months or 3 months, or there will be military action. And I think at that stage, Saddam would have complied. However, just to make the contrary point, it was because he was getting mixed messages from members of the Security Council that he became convinced, as it turned out wrongly, that he would get away with it.
Okay, I'm conscious we're running out of time, but just a few small points, just a couple of quotes that you've put in the book. You've